Hello, everybody. Thanks for waiting. I think we're going to kick off the second part of the our post-election hearing. The topic of this panel is improving fundraising and disclosure through technology. And I'm really pleased that we're going to have three of the most knowledgeable people I know about civic technology on this panel tonight. Let me just read a little introduction so we can warm you up for this panel. With each successive election, the role of technology in campaigns has grown. Broader access to new technology is making it easier for candidates to connect with contributors and voters. The effective use of these new tools can help advance the values of the campaign finance program by lowering the cost and increasing the efficiency of campaigns' fundraising and communications work. Campaigns are raising funds over the internet in growing numbers. Candidates for City Council raised more than twice as much online as they did 4 years ago. And candidates running citywide rely on the internet for more than 40% of their overall fundraising. That's an amazing number, 40% of their overall fundraising. The vast majority of contributions made by credit card are probably not surprisingly received through the campaign's websites. We have a handy-dandy graph, which unfortunately I'm not going to read from, but it shows how that growth has happened. Going forward, technology will provide candidates with additional options for raising small contributions from New Yorkers. For example, legislation approved by the City Council in December 2013 will allow candidates to accept matchable contributions via text message. During the 2013 elections, the Campaign Finance Board made significant strides in utilizing technology to help candidates raise funds, report their finances, and connect with potential supporters. For candidates, the launch of a web-based version of C-Smart, the CFB's campaign finance disclosure software, made complying with the law simpler. Data disclosed by campaigns is available to the public through our improved and refined searchable database, which provided voters with robust new reporting on independent expenditures. Thanks to a wonderful public-private partnership with Pivotal Labs, Method, full disclosure, my own firm, Tipping Point Partners, and TechServe, the CFB launched a first-of-its-kind mobile app, NYC Votes, that provided voters with a way to access information about candidates, make contributions, and find their polling sites on their smartphones and tablets. So thank you very much, panelists, for being with us today. If you could just, each panelist, if you could read whatever statement you want to make, and also introduce yourselves, that would be appreciated. And then we'll follow up with questions from the board and then from the audience. Gail,
am I starting? Okay. Good afternoon, and it's an honor to be here with colleagues, but also with all of you. And I want to congratulate the chair, because in her previous job, she put together a great report on the Board of Elections. And I want to thank Art Chang because of his technology background, and of course all the staff at CFB and VAC are phenomenal. So it's a great honor to be here. I think 2013 was a great year because we looked at technology, and we also looked, I think, at how some of the apps, and we looked to see how we can do outreach, and there were a lot of good things that came out of that election. And I want to just talk about some of the good things that had been brought to my attention technology-wise from people who are in our Beltway discussion, because I can tell you the public is voting on such a low percentage, and something that we really need to look at, but we need to celebrate what we are doing right. Certainly the Twitter feed posting, it might just be some of the reporters, but I think others too want to know what the CFB is doing, and that Twitter feed has been phenomenal, particularly talking about the filing and what candidates are getting donated to them and all that activity. And I think we all know that the CFB's database, the searchable database, is excellent and certainly is used. I do think down the line, as the borough president, I've been working with the community boards. We've already had 3 or 4 meetings with them and with their staffs and with their members on, obviously transportation topics and other issues. But the more that we can get the general public, not necessarily those in the Beltway, to understand how to use this data, the better. And that's something that obviously I'm interested based on my open data law that we passed with John's assistance and others, but the only aspect that I would like to see enhanced on all of this great information is trying to get beyond the people who would normally use it to show how it could be used, and that's just training. I also want to just talk a little bit about my local law 116 of 2013, which, as you know, is the texting for small donations, small contributions to campaigns. Again, CFB and VAC were really helpful on this. We're the first city to do this, and I want to thank the CFB because your embracing of it gave support to my colleagues to be able to pass it, because it's brand new, not something that anybody was familiar with. I think we all want small donations, but the fact that you're willing to take on the regulations, which is really where the rubber hits the road, is what made the law pass. And I know that it'll be very exciting when we're finally able to implement it. I like the NYC Votes app, which your chair of VAC has had so much to do with all of his colleagues. I think it's another example where we don't have the press opportunities that big companies that do apps have. We have to figure out how the public, again, can get more information about these good opportunities. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience as a candidate. A lot of this is from the wonderful treasurer who, with volunteers, did a yo person's job on making the campaign so successful. So I will go through some of them, and I'm reading some of them. Most of this, rest of this, a tech front, I can do it without any notes at all. But obviously matching funds are important. I started late. I was passing the paid sick days bill, and I got into the race late, and everybody said, "You're getting in too late, terrible, terrible, Gail, horrible, awful." And I thought to myself, I've been around before you were born, honey, so just keep saying horrible, and I'll keep running. So we did enter late, so that meant that we didn't have as much money as my opponents. So that, therefore, matching funds were a great equalizing element, and I can promise you they were exceptionally appreciated in our case. I think in all cases, but certainly in my case. But these are some of the challenges, and I think I'm a big believer, as you are. If you get public money, you have to be transparent and you have to be accountable, because it is not your money, it belongs to the public. But I think a lot of people now who are donating are doing it on credit cards. I never move. Whatever, I just stay one place forever. Everybody knows me, but lots of people move. That is the norm. I am not the norm. So you move and you forget that your credit card has your old address. You put down your new address because you're trying to be a good donor and do the right thing, and you forget that you have two addresses. So again, it's something that needs to be perhaps made a little bit easier for the person who's a treasurer, how it becomes easier, or if it becomes easier, something to look at, because you'll have a whole bunch of names. 2 or 3 will be a problem. That has to be straightened out, but you're not aware of it, the person who's donating is not aware of it, and it's not quite clear the path to resolution. It's a small item, but it's something that I think needs to be looked at, because more and more people use a credit card and more people move. So how to figure that out? I think just the training on candidates is excellent. I heard nothing but accolades for staff and for the training. But again, how to deal with some of these rejected matches has to be emphasized in the training. I think that the staff feel strongly that trainings are C-SMART, are helpful, and I want to end by saying how hands-on they are and how good they are. At the end of the day, any computer-based database will require someone who was computer literate and experienced at data entry to handle. I know when I was in the city council and running, and Ben can talk more specifically about that, I made sure that I had and paid people a lot of money to be the treasurer, but I don't know. I'd love to hear, when your analysis is all done, how that worked for smaller campaigns. Because the person who asked their neighbor to be a treasurer is an idiot, because that neighbor is not going to have the kind of technical support in that campaign that is necessary, in my opinion. And when I say neighbor, I mean somebody who just hasn't done it before, doesn't have technology in their background. as honest as they may be, I think is still a challenge. So the question is, how do you make sure that the small campaigns have the same expertise? And I don't know if that's something that's a problem. Maybe it's not. Maybe everybody was able to handle C-SMART and all of the challenges. I would also add that could a program like Authorize.net that campaigns use to collect credit card donations export data directly into C-SMART? And I'm sure you know this already, but can they link C-SMART to Doing Business database, or as I call it, Jesse's database, you know? And can you add a prompt if a person in Doing Biz database? For example, there's a negative prompt if you try to list a person with an address outside of New York City for matching funds. And so is there a way to expand that so you receive notification that a person is listed in the Doing Business database? So I guess there's a disconnect there. You'll laugh, but my treasurer thinks C-SMART is actually kind of fun. So I don't know if she's the only one in the world who thinks that, but she does. And then, we're still going back to this issue now to jump to the voter turnout. It's so low, and that's something that perhaps VAC has been working on, the Board of Elections has been working on. Many New Yorkers still don't know who their elected officials are, particularly when you get below mayor. It just goes precipitously down. So obviously some of us have to, make that's our job. But tools like the NYC Voter app can help with this. But again, electeds and city agencies need to do more to expand on their use of social media, and maybe vis-a-vis in a nonpartisan way, non-political way, how VAC and the campaign finance, who have a lot of experience doing this. Not everybody is Ben, not everybody is me, and I'm finding that a lot of electeds, we should be working perhaps even with the community boards and the CECs, which are the parent organizations, elected, and the advisory boards, the neighborhood advisory boards, to let them know how the campaign finance, how VAC works, anything to try to get this number of persons registering and voting up. I just want to talk a little bit about that, because the bills that are in Albany are the key to some of this success, and we don't have a lot to say about that, but we certainly have to keep reminding the public that one of the reasons they can't do early voting is because the state legislature has not passed it. I don't understand why that is such a challenge, but it is, and has not passed. The whole issue of registration. People come from other parts of the United States, as we know, where you can register more easily. They can't understand why it can't be done online. The governor obviously made it possible for people who are changing on a motor voter, meaning a driver's license database, to be able to do that, but nobody else can do that, and we all know that not a New Yorkers per capita have a lot of cars. So I'd love to have more of a discussion about, I know the motor voter bill really well. I know some are state agencies, some are city agencies. Nothing is monitored, to the best of my knowledge, even with the paper. So the question is, how do we do all of that more online to get registration up? I have no clue where we are with the original signature debate. It's a debate that's been going on for 30 years that I know of. Some documents that come from the court, I know now, are nothing to do with voter registration, are able to be signed without an original signature. And the question is, how do we resolve this with the issue of registration? The other issue, of course, for getting more people to participate is to have a change in the party registration or your address closer to the election. When you move today, you can actually change your address online with the United States Post Office. And I don't understand why that could not be synchronized with the Board of Elections. I have no idea. I'm sure this is an ongoing discussion. And of course, when you get to the experience of being at a poll, I love going because I know everybody in the poll and all the poll watchers, but that's not the norm. So you have to think about the font and the lines and the language and how welcoming it is. And that's another whole issue, not to be necessarily brought up today. But I do think that all of these issues are part of our realm if we're going to deal with getting more people. And even though it's not the experienced today of a candidate, but there are technology implications for all of this. The final issue, and I wrote a long letter to Mike Ryan, who's doing a great job, I think, as the new executive director of the New York City Board of Elections. I simply said, why can't the roles be corrected when somebody has died? Because I know when I send out a newsletter, I get back, Gail, Mrs. Jones died a long time ago. How come you don't know? Well, I don't know that Mrs. Jones died a long time ago. But why doesn't the Board of Elections know that? Why do I have to know that? So then I'm so anal, I send a nice note to the Board of Elections, Mrs. Jones died, could you please correct this? Well, this doesn't seem to be a very streamlined process that I am participating in. So I wrote to Mike Ryan saying, why can't you talk to the Department of Health? And they could talk to you. To his credit, he wrote me back 5 pages, and I will share it with you. But basically, he's going to be working with the Social Security Administration Death Master File, because there's actually a better listing of who has died. And it's complicated. Mrs. Jones goes from her apartment to the nursing home. She actually dies in the nursing home. It's not necessarily clear to the Department of Health that she's the same Mrs. Jones who died in the nursing homes, who left her address on 103rd Street. How do they know? So all of these kinds of small items need to be addressed somehow, and obviously technology is one way to do it, but you have to be correct. You do not want to take somebody off a voting roll who is a legitimate voter. So I understand that there's lots of nuances to all of this. So those are some of my thoughts. I certainly look forward to working with you. I'm here with Will Cogrove from our office. It's his birthday today, I want you to know. And I am, he is the one who is the brilliant behind trying to think of how we can deal with campaign technology, how we can work to get more people to vote, and how we can figure out how to advocate for all these things and actually get them done. So thank you very much.
Hey, Ben, I think there's actually 1 or 2 things that Gail didn't mention.
Gail, am I on?
You're on?
You might have to talk really, really
close. You have to actually put your mouth almost like this.
Okay, no problem. So the borough president is always a tough act to follow, but hopefully I'll be up to the challenge. I'm Councilmember Ben Kalos. If you've got a phone in the audience or if you're watching the stream, I really am actually offended if you don't take your phone out, and you can tweet me. It's at Ben Kalos. That's my government account, and if you want to talk to my campaign, it's just plain old at Kalos. That's one of the new things that's coming out. We have to have 2 different profiles. By way of background, I got involved in elections as a member of Democratic Lawyers Council, and in 2007 I noticed that New York State had dropped 2 million people from the voter rolls. And so I launched a site called votersearch.org, worked closely with the New York State Board of Elections to make sure that they created their own app. I actually gave them my code, and as a result, people could start verifying their voter registration, because going into the 2008 presidential elections, one of the things that was a problem and will always be a problem is that people will show up to vote and think that they registered, or think that their registration followed them, or that they're in a party. And something that's really important that we can use technology for is assisting people with voter verification and making sure that they know that they're registered to vote, and perhaps having awareness campaigns to say, hey, did you move? Update your voter registration. Check online. Do you want to vote in the primary? Check online. And along those lines, we do have to change some of those laws in Albany around registration. It takes a year and 1 election in between when you change in order for it to take effect. In 2009, after I was done being a chief of staff in the Assembly, I put all the Assembly and Senate voting records online. 2012, I started running for City Council, and a lot of my peers liked my website, and you can still go see it. It's kalosforcouncil.com, and at that point I had a choice between, in addition to being an attorney and now City Council person, I'm also a web developer. So I had a choice between charging people what market rate tends to be for a City Council website, which is between $5,000 and $10,000, or some people running for citywide may pay $50,000 and up for their websites, or creating a free tool and getting to participate in the 21st Century Democracy Meetup. I saw that there was a need for candidates to have a website. So in terms of what can the CFB do, it's provide every candidate running with a website from the time that they register that is fully featured. That means that you're using an open source product like Drupal, and every time a candidate says, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I could post a press release, you add the content type, you add that feature, and then it's rolled out to the hundreds of other candidates saying, hey, somebody requested a feature, we rolled it out. Generally, it takes a couple of hours to add that kind of feature. So I created a site called votersgive.com. I negotiated with a credit card merchant processing company for the lowest rate in the state that I was aware of, and got them to pay for the site, which almost, I would say, stole, but it's public because it was from the government. It literally modeled off of the CFB's voter guide from the 2009 campaign. I won my primary. I want to thank the NYCFB, the compliance staff. Chris, my compliance person, is actually in the audience, so I just want to acknowledge him and say thank you, as well as the audit team. I agree with the borough president. You shouldn't need a lawyer to do compliance. A lot of campaigns do. I would be interested to see how many campaigns spend money on attorney's fees. I ended up having to do most of my own compliance and train some 20-year-old law students on how to do my compliance for me once the campaign really heated up. But it is something most people are intimidated by and have a lot of trouble with. Following the general part of public matching meant I was able to say no to a lot of special interest dollars. I made the choice. I did not want to take real estate money. Real estate showed up with a bundled stack to say, congratulations, you're maxed out. And I said, no, thank you. I turned to my staff and said, you guys want to put in the extra 100 or 1,000 hours of low dollar fundraising time that this would require? And they said yes, and we did that. And so I'm now a council member. I won the general election. And so I have a tremendous respect for Gail Brewer, and would like to be here when I grow up one day. So I was lucky enough to be appointed government operations chair, which is, again, big shoes to fill. I want to acknowledge David Seitzer, our counsel, who's here today, and I'm looking forward to doing great work with him. Our first hearing is going to be with the Board of Elections on the DOI report and the Presidential Election Commission on election administration, and that's going to be February 28th, and we invite as many people here as you'd like. The Commission's report had a lot to do with what we can use for technology. We're also going to have one in March or April on campaign finance transparency legislation that's been introduced by Dan Garodnick and Brad Lander. I think the best thing that could happen with the registration is I asked my my treasurer to get on NYC votes as soon as we could, because I was really excited. I wanted to be very supportive, and their response was, I don't have time. So if when somebody registers and creates their committee, it automatically is one form that takes care of everything, so that they get their website, they get their NYC votes profile, they don't have to go through a separate process with the other vendor, or we integrate it in. That would probably help, because when you're first registering, it's a lot easier. In terms of technology pieces we can do, there is websites for candidates, as I already mentioned. Information on candidates. There is so little information out there. I have to acknowledge Ben Max in the audience. He ran a site called Decide NYC. It was one of the only websites covering my election before it made national and international news. So having resources so that when candidates are doing something, whether it's partnerships with outside groups like Decide NYC or the CFB curating content that's submitted to them by default, I'm not sure, but that needs to be out there. Text messaging gateway, Rock the Vote has it. Gail's legislation has become law. Minority communities that don't have access to computers use feature phones. So having a text messaging gateway with Rock the Vote will allow them to receive notices, reminders, information on deadlines. Voter history. I know the voter history on anyone who's a registered voter in this room. Most people don't realize that that's public information. They don't realize that the way that candidates do messaging and pay attention to people and even elected officials is based on voter history. Making that public information and displaying it to voters as part of their voter registration check will prompt them to do more and realize that their vote is being silenced by not voting. Most people don't realize that their party affiliation is also public information, and by displaying that and also trying to let them know that, are you interested in choosing who the next mayor is? And letting them know and educating them that if they don't choose a party based on the current registration process and voting process in New York City, they're unlikely to have a say in things. In most cases, I think the New York Times put out a story saying that there were only 4 council races that were competitive, because in 47 other council races, the Democrat was the perceived winner. And I remember there was an article asking people to give back money that they received from the CFB because they weren't going to have a competitive general election. In terms of fundraising tools, if somebody's using NYC Votes or whatever the Board of Election, New York City Campaign Finance Board provides, it should be seamlessly integrated into CSmart so that somebody knows that any contributions they take through NYC Votes, they have no compliance that they have to do. That all the information will automatically flow to CSmart so they don't have to worry about that, and that will encourage them to use it. In terms of compliance, the audit should be in plain language. When there's a problem on how to fix something, we had to go back and forth with the auditors multiple times to find out what was acceptable language for people to have their matching claim validated, and that should just be provided. If you want this match, they have to sign this letter. Here's the template, and you do that with the contribution forms. So it's logical that it would be extended to the other part. And again, for treasurers, you shouldn't need to be a lawyer, but I would say that the compliance staff does everything in their power to supplement even when a candidate chooses their neighbor. In terms of the Presidential Commission on Election Administration, electronic poll books, live feeds is something they suggested so people can see, but basically some sort of reporting on wait times so that people who see a long wait time at one point will be able to get an update. And online registration would be something huge to have happen on a state level. And then on a city level, I know a lot of people in the City Council, a lot of my colleagues in the Progressive Caucus are focused on non-citizen voting, which would enfranchise several million New Yorkers who haven't been able to vote, and that would only be in municipal elections. Thank you.
Great list. So John?
Yes, my name's John Caney. I'm the Executive Director. I am still the Executive Director of William Ben Albany, and I come to this by way of working on state government reform, and in particular, the State Board of Elections and their not very good campaign finance reporting system. My group and a coalition of technology NGOs and others worked on this report to create a state open campaign system for the state. And in doing so, in creating this, we looked at the best practices around the United States and how online candidate finance reporting platforms work and who does the best job with the technology and other things. And we really didn't want to use New York City as our example for the state because we thought it might be a sweeter pill to swallow if we could point to another state or somewhere else. After looking all around the country, we came back to New York City as having the best system by far in the country, and I should just report back and say that. So, you know, kudos to the CFB and for that. And I'd like to just call out a couple of key things. One, the thing that we look at, and my group works a lot on government reinvention and best practice spreading, is does an agency have a process of continuous improvement in place? That is, do they have a public process and an internal process that they're always looking at how they do things and how they can do them better? And the answer is a big yes. And in fact, the New York City Campaign Finance Board which did not pay me for this promotional appearance, has one of the best public processes of continuous improvement of any public agency, as far as we can tell, on the state and local level in the United States, and is indeed our model for government reinvention. So congratulations there on that. I want to go with that for just 1 second, though, and suggest that you do a better job of telling the public about all the great things that you do, and particularly putting them on your website, and in a way that all of the enormous amount of research and thinking behind how you do things is made clear to the public. And I would point to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, of all things, which has a really cool open data site called FRED, and which has a really interesting section that just talks about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And FRED is the most important econometric database probably in the world right now, incredibly heavily used. And that feature is often cited in The Economist and Wall Street Journal, that feature of why are we doing what we're doing and what we're doing next. So just explaining to the public what you're doing is very important. And just when it comes to innovation in particular, hats off to Art Chang and the NYC Votes team and what they've done. And we were exposed to Art's work a bit when we researched the state open campaign system, and had no idea of the amount of nitty-gritty work they did with credit card processors and looking at the very, very specific technical and legal issues involved in credit card processing using the mobile platform for the Campaign Finance Board. This is really important research nationally, and that's the kind of stuff that should be on your website in a way so that others around the United States can look at it, and so that NGOs and advocates and people who are looking at, you know, how do we make New York's election system work better, or New York State's work better, so that we can see all of that thinking, which I would not have known about except for the fact that we met with Art and CFB and the staff here. So part of that continuous improvement for yourself and others needs to be more public about it, which takes some work, because a lot of things are probably somewhat informal or, you know, not in a great form. So get that online. A couple other things. Just some ideas, since a lot was covered here already. Do a vendor fair. Bring in the technology vendors that sell services to candidates, and have CFB host it, bring in the leading vendors, and have them pitch their products to candidates, to staffs, to political consultants, just so you can see in one place what the best practices commercially are. I think a lot of people have an intuitive idea or have been exposed to bits and pieces, but having all the vendors in one place is a pretty common practice for spreading technology best practices in different areas of government and industry. It could be geospatial or, you know, mapping technology. It could be you know, things having to do with unemployment benefits, but it's a very common thing that the federal government does and state governments do. And in this area where technology is just skyrocketing and accelerating, and and the CFB is so strong, I think it would be a really interesting thing to look at. Another thing to think about is very much echoing what Ben said about text and two-way text and the importance of texting, SMS, for people of all different classes in this city and this country. Think about using incentives to get people to sign up to a text system for day of election notices. So right now we have in the city of New York Notify NYC, we have City of New Department of Education text services, we have MTA text services that tell you about all kinds of things that are going on, like there's going to be a lot of snow, or, you know, alternate side of the street's canceled, or this train's not working, usually bad stuff. Sometimes, though, we get notices saying, don't forget to vote, which we did get this year from somebody. I'm on all kinds of lists. But I think you can go further, because Notify NYC, the city's text notification service, has a very low subscriber base compared to the number of people. And while the CFB can't provide prizes to encourage people to vote legally, it could potentially find ways of gamifying or providing incentives or prizes for people to sign up to a text list that reminded them to vote 2 or 3 times. So it might be a way of vastly increasing your ability to reach a public that you're not getting enough of right now. So, you know, one of the things that's really big right now in total internet commerce is gamification or incentive systems. And You can't use all of them, but you can use some of them. And so looking at increasing your email and text signups with incentives and games might be something to look at going forward. Because you really, really do need to do a better job using text, as does all government right now. It's just a vastly underused tool. Lastly, C-Smart is really great. We'd like to see C-Smart go to 100% smart forms. Now, as a non-candidate, I don't get to play with C-Smart, so we've seen some demos. And I know the development team is very interested in going farther with smart forms. But there should be really no kickbacks at all for candidates to deal with if they're using C-Smart completely. And then lastly, I hope that C-Smart is made open source. That is, the code for that is put into GitHub so that developers and around the country can use that for their campaign finance systems. And the reason I think it's worth CFB's time to do that is because it would create a larger body of users. And you're so far ahead right now that I think your system would be adopted by a lot of people. Because when we were researching this SOX platform and we told other municipalities and other states what CFB already had in C-Smart, they were really, really interested. And many of them, I'm sure, would adopt it. So the basic idea is you create a larger pool of software developers and users, and that they in turn help you improve your product, and you basically get free improvements from that. So those are just some of my thoughts, and congratulations to CFB.
Great, thank you very much. Do any of my fellow board members have a question?
There was what I'll call a somewhat loose discussion earlier about using the Amber Alert system as a vehicle to remind people to register, or that there are deadlines coming up, and since that just came up without any advanced thought, without even knowing about all the logistical or legal issues. But that's one of the broadest systems of getting information out. It just pops up on your cell phone, even though they haven't signed up. Now, there are obviously maybe policy issues about that, but I'd be curious as to your reaction.
I don't get it. I mean,
I get Amber Alerts on my cell phone. They just come.
You
right.
mean like for weather, like there's...
No, Amber Alerts when there's a missing child.
Yeah, I get those too, but I get it under Notify NYC. Is that?
There's certain things that give you, like, I don't know, they override. It's like that emergency broadcast
Yeah.
system.
It overrides. You get it without,
I know.
without signing up for anything.
Oh, I didn't.
It shows up on my cell phone.
You must have signed up for something, though.
Nope.
Okay. Well, I don't get it. I do get Notify NYC, and if somebody's got dementia and they're wandering around Queens, I get it. And so I think that the Amber Alert might, for voting, I think it might turn more people off in some way. You have to think, I like the incentive idea. You have to do something positive to get people to vote. That would be my feeling. I think it's going to take a combination of many, many ways. You have to have better candidates. You have to have all the early things that we suggested to make it a place and an opportunity that people want to take advantage of, and you have to do a lot more online. So I'm not thinking that the Amber Alert, maybe it's one aspect to it, but you have to do all these other ones also,
sure.
in my opinion.
Well, I have a question. So I often use this analogy of Amazon as being, a comparison to the process of voting, with voting actually being the store for democracy, and actually the polling place as being checkout. And I also started more recently using this analogy that the Campaign Finance Board is actually like merchant services for democracy, when candidates are the merchants selling their notions of what democracy stands for. And so we as a Campaign Finance Board, I think through the technology and other great plaudits that you've given us, so thank you for those, well deserved on behalf of the team here. I think we've done a lot of that. But one thing we've heard over and over today is information for voters. And how do we increase the information for voters? And one thing that we've struggled with is in an environment where Flappy Bird goes from, in less than a year, to 50 million cell phones, where Upworthy goes to 30 million unique visitors in 14 months. What role should the CFB have in communicating information about candidates to the voters? Again, looking at this from the point of view of being merchant services.
John, do you want to talk about that?
No, I think.
Or Ben, I
I
have some
think
ideas.
I think I've already touched on it, which is just giving candidates better tools to use. So a lot of candidates will use Twitter, but not many voters, at least in my district, were on Twitter. I think we did some sophisticated analytics to try to figure out where people were in the district. But text, having a website where people can put press releases, endorsements, information that voters can get, because I think everything you've done is a great step forward. We have a video voter guide. What I would love to see is more of a partnership for New York City Campaign Finance Board moving further down. So I know Manhattan Neighborhood Network did debates in every city council race on their own, while the CFB tends to focus on the citywides. It would be great if NYC-CFB in the 2017 elections would partner with the neighborhood networks in all 5 boroughs and play a role in those. And I think we have League of Women Voters in the room, and they actually sponsored two of those debates on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And Gail, did you participate? Gail also participated in them. So while we couldn't participate in the debates with CFB, we were able to do it on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And then in terms of Floppy Birds, I guess there's the gamification that that John brought up, but there's another piece that we brought up, and I'll actually give it to you guys if you want it. I launched an initiative called votewithkids.org, and it was targeted at voters for voters, and the concept was to convince them to socialize voting. There's some academic research that says the highest likelihood and predictor of a child voting once they turn 18 is if their parents took them to vote, and in which case it becomes a hereditary trait. So what we did is we created this Tumblr and other types of Instagrams and so on and so forth to try to get parents to take selfies of themselves with their kids voting and just try to change the culture around it to engage voters in a way where it creates a social atmosphere, and trying to work with partners like Facebook and Google and others to make sure that when people vote, it's something that they're doing, and encouraging them to try to engage. But the honest problem is it's low information. The video voter guide is 30 seconds or a minute, or is it 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Manhattan Neighborhood Networks was 1 minute. And so it's a 2-minute video, and all the candidates in my race, we all said the same thing because we all knew what the issues were in the district. We had the paper voter guide, which is amazing because it goes out to every single voter in the city, and that was amazing, but I think it was 100 words, and we all said the same thing. The only way we got to see things is when people actually went to the websites and saw what type of content people were curating. So it's a tough problem, and I think trying to get them engaged and trying to host more debates, and then getting them off Manhattan Neighborhood Network and onto your website, where when people are trying to make a decision, they have everything in one place.
It's an uphill battle. I know that when you run for office, and de Blasio was good at this, you go to the neighborhoods where people vote. And that's really scary because you don't go where people don't vote. So you take a look at what the election districts are, and you go where people vote. So I know people complained in the mayor's race because they never saw any of the candidates. And so I think it behooves all of us to answer your question, which is a good one, which is you're not going to get more people to participate and to up the numbers so candidates go everywhere unless you have people engaged, and they're going to be engaged when they have more sense of who's running and what it's all about. You've got language issues. I mean, a lot of materials not in a language that people read or understand. And some of it is the candidates, I'm going to keep saying this, will go where there is a vote. And so if a group of people don't speak the language and aren't necessarily going to vote, then they're not going to translate and they're not going to be part of that. So it's the government agencies that need to figure out how to address some of these questions. And the candidates are not going to do it, in my opinion. Their websites aren't going to do it. Their social media is not going to do it. The voters are still older. I think social media will get more younger voters, and if we can figure out how, when people move around, how to keep them on a roll or how to make sure that they're still part of the process, then that would help. But the older voters aren't going to use yet social media maybe for the next decade or more. You'll know better than I. It's still not prevalent, particularly at the Board of Elections constituency. So it needs a whole different thought about information. The MNN and the social media is fine, but most people don't go to websites and they don't watch MNN. I'm MNN's biggest supporter, but they don't. And so I just think we need a lot more discussion. I'm afraid it's still back to, getting people come in contact with city agencies. They come in contact with DHS and HRA, et cetera. And I'd love to see those agencies, I don't know if the word is mandated, but to do a lot more on voter education. There are constituencies. They are work for the people of the city of New York. Even high school students, you're supposed to get something when you graduate. Some high schools do it, some don't in terms of a registration form, et cetera. So we need to think of what works for the agencies and their interest, but at the same time, mandates them to do something, in addition to all these other things that you just discussed. But I can tell you, candidates are not going to do it. That's my very crass experience.
Maybe just a quick comment, on the importance of mobile first, since we're talking about technology, and Art has really emphasized this very much, but everything is going towards mobile platforms, and a very important thing we know from demographic research and Pew polls, et cetera, is that more working class and poor households are more likely to have smartphones as their primary way of accessing the internet. And this is a very important thing to think about when you're working on candidate information or anything else. So as CFB moves forward, it has to be mobile first, because that is the most socially equitable technology platform. And I think you guys know that, but this context is very important here. Again, though, about looking at incentive systems to get people into your communication channel, I think it's an area that you could have partnerships with, if you're allowed to do that. I don't know the propriety of this, but what we're talking about here is sign up for our text alerts, and you're in a lottery to get a prize. You can get a prize. It could be cash. You could buy stuff, whatever, something like that, movie tickets. But actual incentives to people to get into your communication channel so they see your stuff.
I don't think you can do that.
Great, well, thank you. So I'll open it up to the audience for just a couple questions. I think we're running a little bit behind. This gentleman here in the first was, you'll state your name and.
Well, I think this man had his hand up first.
Oh, really?
Okay.
My name is David Kayode. Okay, thank you. My name is David Kayode. I was Democrat candidate in District 28 in Jamaica in last election. My question about improving fundraising through technology. I want to ask if the panel can enlighten us about implementing paper system in fundraising in city council level, like
PayPal.
Yeah, paper, right? Because I know I set up paper during the last election, but I was told that I can't use it. So, and it will be the easiest way to get fund through the grassroots and whosoever that can.
So I think this is something where the NYC CFP can specifically help, especially with John's idea of a vendor fair, or at least assisting a little bit more. So the story with PayPal is there's 3 levels of accounts, and the account that you signed up for has a shared merchant account, and the account that you needed to sign up for with PayPal would have given you your own merchant account. And this is something that I as an attorney and my compliance person, Chris, had some conversations with, and I think it's worth the CFB looking why we need to have separate merchant accounts when PayPal would do it. So the answer is it's a technicality in their regulations. So it's actually, I'll throw it to them if they want to answer the question.
We can have a separate conversation around.
I mean,
PayPal.
this is one of the things that we spend a lot of time, we will be spending some time on, is revising those regulations and making sure they're most up to date and for the next election. So it's, it's definitely one of the things on the agenda to look into is how to better process credit cards. The NYC Votes app, handles that completely. So for the candidates, and we're working on expanding that, and also working on revising our regulations about the acceptance of credit cards.
Thank you.
One other question? Go ahead.
Reginald Sweeney 2023. In respect to third-party technology and vendors, I would hope that the CFB pay attention truly to privacy in respect to people uploading information, and that would be a concern because, now you can, we had hacking activities last month around the Christmas holidays that would probably get people a little nervous about that. Gail, C-Smart, I love it. And I'm that idiot next door.
Good.
Very simple process. You call up, they'll guide you through. I think it's a 5-step process to get your contributions in, and it was very easy for us. The voter guide and the website, Ben, is one of the most important genius ideas because if you did miss your 2-minute presentation, you'd have a website that would only be up for the time of the primary, and if you did win your primary, it'll last for your general election, and you're only talking about a few months. If New York City has the best policy, the best program, I hope we don't give it away without putting a fee to it, because you spent the money to get the technology right, and that's important. And the other thing that I was worried about is like your voter guide. Believe it or not, a lot of folks walked up to me that did not even know me in my district and said, hey, I didn't see your picture, but I seen your name through one of those media things. And ladies and gentlemen, Facebook, when you talk about people that do not have access, low income, there's billions of folks on Facebook. That would probably, if you took a look at the media outlets that have the high traffic user, you would be surprised because, as Gail mentioned, reaching the community boards. My community board, when they canceled their meetings, I didn't know. I didn't know that I had to go on Facebook to know that the community board meeting was canceled. So as far as the state's concerned, one of the great tools is when you log on to C-Smart, you have an opportunity to file a report to the State Board of Election, I believe. Truly try to fix that up because I had a little kink. I don't know when the audit process is, but connecting these dots together and making sure that this program that is in place is stronger, it's amazing. Plus, you can save a lot of money to candidates on the website. I wish I would have met you. We were getting $10,000, crazy amount of money. And if there's a website that can be used for the candidate for the time that he's involved with the election, I think that would help them as far as money concerned and reaching the voters. We have a tough time. I had a tough time in my 36th district because she mentioned the elder voters. We have a new generation growing, pushing, and our seniors and our voters registration was off. We were missing almost 75,000 people, the guy that helped me out saying where are they at, but in doing that, we can reach the people that are not registered, but they're on Facebook. Thank you.
I think we probably should move on.
I wanna- Brian
Last
Murray.
question.
Good, a quick comment here. I think the idea of giving the candidates the tools to operate, I think, is a noble one. I think that's fine. To echo the previous speaker, I think the one thing this board has to realize is its mission is within the 5 counties. Again, it's noble to do stuff outside and help others. If there's a value to this city, and having other vendors come in at times is one thing, but the mission here is not to make sure there's a statewide voter campaign finance board, as it were. This mission is for the 5 counties that we sit here as residents of New York City. But that, again, going back to the notification thing, I checked my phone, there's an option on there to opt out for which you want to get and so forth. When you sign up for new systems, new programs, that's how you get it. But that if you have a primary going on for city council, going back to local issues here, how within those phone numbers do you know to tell people to go to vote when whether there's a primary or not in that district? I mean, there's got to be a lot more information associated with a phone number than just a number and the fact it may be in New York City. As I said before, there's 16 million cell phone numbers for New York City right now. So you can't just go out there and
We got
willy-nilly
it.
do it.
You said, you made these points before.
Okay, well, new audience though here with what's
Okay,
going
yeah.
on. So.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
for
very
your
much,
comments.
members
And
of the
I also
panel.
just want to just make a point here that I think with all the applause for thank you for the applause for me and for the board, the staff is the one who does all the work, and they do the heavy lifting, and they spent innumerable hours trying to resolve these issues and make all the things happen, from credit card processing to the data exchange that enabled NYC votes to run, and none of this could have happened without this amazing staff. So thank you guys.
We like them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.